Hallelujah, Abba. We come together this day to praise thy name, to thank thee, Father, for amidst these, let's call them natural disasters that are going on right now in some of our areas, Father. Thou art still holding us together, thou art holding us strong, thou art fortifying us, keeping us safe. We thank thee, Abba, and we praise thee because although we have experienced it around us and we have been affected by it in some sense because we're living in it, we still have the shalom that thy love brings us, that thy protection is upon us, especially Abba during this Moedim. It's a reminder, Father, that we are amidst all of the darkness, yet thy light still shines through. So we praise thee and we thank thee, Abba. Among these days of Moedim, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Amen.
I mean, so we're here. This is September 29th of 2024. And people are in the midst of right in the middle of numerous calendars of the autumn Moedim. So some people have just finished Sukkot, some people are just about to start Sukkot, and I think some people were a month before and some people perhaps a few weeks later. But anyway, we're right in the middle of it. And I wanted to bring out just a perspective. Leviticus 25, the last verse, verse 55 says, "For the children of Israel are servants to me. They are my servants, whom I have taken out of the land of Egypt. I am Yahweh Elheka." So in the Hebrew, ki li, kaf yod lamed yod. So again, kaf yod is like my hand. He's raising up his hand, as it were. Word kaf yod, for, thus, therefore, when, while, if. It's like one of those transition words. So it says, well, because it's a transition word, it references previously. So verse 54 says, if he has not been redeemed, so he's talking about something else. He's talking about slaves getting free, or people that have sold themselves into indebted bondage of servitude, and how the Jubilee will let them go. Now, I haven't read the book of Jubilees, and I know some people put more merit to the book of Jubilees than they do to the Torah. I can't address that because I haven't read it. I think I looked at part of it and I've been distracted from pursuing that. But it's talking about, like a couple of verses previously, if there are yet many years, he shall repay his redemption accordingly from the money of his purchase. So he's saying, if you take out a loan, somebody loans you, and then you have to pay them back, it's only up until the Shemitah year, but then you've got this 7 Shemitahs, then you got the Yovel, the Jubilee. And at the Jubilee, everything goes back to the original owner. So if there are a few years left until the Jubilee year, he shall reckon that with him. According to his years shall he repay his redemption. He shall be with him like a laborer hired by the year. He shall not subjugate him through hard labor in your sight. So Yahweh was basically saying the world economy is all, especially nowadays, built on capturing other people by their need, offering them money, a loan, however you want to look at that, and then say, now you owe me, and then charging such extreme rates of interest. It's called usury. So when you charge like 27% annually interest on a Visa card or MasterCard, you're never going to pay it off. And that's all by design. I've heard it said that a mortgage on a house, like mortality, is the word, like mortician, is dead. And a gauge, is like a caliper. You know, you reference the grip of like the size of a wrench. So a mort gauge is a death grip. Got somebody by the throat. You could pay off a car for 70,000 in 5 years, but the house is going to take you 40 years, and you're going to end up paying 4 times. If you buy a house for 70,000, you'll end up paying 450 by the time you're done with just your simple mortgage. And all that's calculated. But see, in Yahuwah's way of doing things, he knows, see, everything that happens on the face of the earth, he had to think that out ahead of time, and he knows what we're going to do. He knows what we're going to go through. He knows as soon as Adam and Hua got kicked out of the garden, they have to build shelters. They have to design and manufacture clothing, transportation. So somebody's going to invent cities and commerce, plumbing, power supply, whether it's electrical or water power. He planned this whole thing out. And though all we know of the petroleum industry is that it didn't happen, that people realized, hey, petroleum could be a fuel until like the 1800s sometime, middle of the 1800s. Before that, it was just a lubricant, or from what I understand, in Sodom and Gomorrah, they used the pitch, the tar, that came up from the bottom of the Dead Sea. It came up in big chunks because it floats on the water. They called it the bulls, B-U-L-L-S, the bulls of the Dead Sea, I think is what it was referred to. A big chunk, maybe the size of a house or a car or something, maybe bigger, would cut loose from down at the bottom of the Dead Sea and rise to the surface. And as soon as it appeared, suddenly, people were just lined up on shore in their boats waiting, and they'd all just go out there as fast as they could. And the first guy that could get there and that could claim that for himself, he'd have other people in his boat who maybe they were archers or had whatever to keep everybody else away. If you could claim that for yourself, and they had axes, they'd hack away pieces of the tar that came up, throw them on another boat, and those people would take off and go back to the shore and throw them on camels and go as fast as they could to the market, and to be the first ones that could get there with the resource, which was then sent all around the local world because it was a valuable resource. And that was at the Dead Sea. And Sodom and Gomorrah apparently had the mortar between the stones. Like if you're doing brickwork, masonry work, nowadays we would use cement to hold the bricks together, but they used pitch. So when it rained down fire and brimstone, all that stuff caught fire. So the houses themselves were burning with this intense heat, not just the fire and brimstone. Just so you know, it was all designed. And it's like, well, what caused the fire and brimstone to come down? Well, it rained down from heaven. It was a miraculous destruction. Well, some people say, one theory is that the Dead Sea, having all this pitch down below, that they were manufacturing, doing stuff along the shore, processing the pitch or whatever it might have been, and somehow somebody lit up, or somehow there was a natural event that lit the gases on fire like a volcanic eruption, which just blew all that stuff straight up into the air, and then it came down and rained down upon them. And you could say, well, there doesn't have to be a reasonable, natural event when it's a miraculous event. Fire, brimstone coming out of heaven could have just been it coming out of heaven. Well, the guy named Immanuel Velikovsky, back in about 1950, wrote the book called Worlds in Collision. And he says, well, that mysterious planet Nibiru was a physical, natural phenomenon, event happening, which coincided with things like the Exodus. I'm not sure if he mentioned it having to do anything with Sodom and Gomorrah, but it would show up from time to time, and it's going to be showing up in the future, as he says. Whether or not it does is anybody's guess. But the point is, does Elohim use what he already built into the earth, the systems of the earth? Are they on a timer where he goes, hey, listen, was it already prescribed, written beforehand, that in the year 2024, Hurricane Helene would come up the Atlantic seaboard and nail a few communities? It's going to happen. It will happen. There's no question. It's already, and whoever happens to be there, it's like playing musical chairs, right? As a child, they train you to think about life with these simple, almost silly little games. The musical chairs, you have a row of chairs lined up. Say there's a dozen chairs, but you'll have 13 children. And they all walk around the chairs while music's playing. And then all of a sudden the music stops. And as soon as the music stops, everybody's supposed to sit down. Well, one person can't sit down if there's 13 children and 12 chairs, and so one person's out. They take away a chair, now you've got 12 people and 11 chairs, and they keep doing it until there's only one person left. And you're walking around a circle when the music just happens to stop. And you say, well, is that a model of predestination? Or is that a model of, elbow the other kid in the nose and grab the chair? I mean, do you have to fight for that chair? Is it just a matter of luck, fortune? Nobody knows how the planet works. John Calvin in Geneva, Switzerland, 1600s, 1500s, he was a theologian, philosopher, and he came up with what became known as Calvinism, which became you might say, the throne of the Presbyterian Church, which is to say, this is where they sit in the Calvinist perspective of predestination. And they have something called the elect. There's a verse, a couple of verses that might mention this thing called the elect. The word for chosen or selected or elect is bachar, bet, het, resh. So when I try to just remember some English words to help me remember the Hebrew words, bachar. Well, there's a word, bacharti, tav yod, which means I have or I will. I have chosen or I will choose or I will select. Bachardi. Well, that almost sounds like the rum called Bacardi, because there's a family named Bacardi who has an estate growing the sugar cane, and they make this rum, and it's like one has nothing to do with the other. But if you're manufacturing a product, you say, no, we got a really great product here. This is top shelf. This is the good stuff, Bacardi rum. Then you could say, well, I want to select the best. I want to choose the finest. So you make that association in your mind. If it's Hebrew, it's Bachardi. I have chosen and selected the supreme. So the word Bachar also means select or young warriors. So that would be like not just your standard soldier, where you take a bunch of farm boys and you give them pointy sticks and a tin can to wear on their head and say, now go out and face the enemy. But you give these guys the really good weapons and the really good armor, like a knight, and you train him, like one of the 300 Spartans, where that's your whole life. Those guys are the selected, like the Navy SEALs or the call it the Republican Guard of Iraq, the elite troops. That's Bacardi. So the fact that Bacardi happens to be an intoxicating drink is a coincidental reference of trying to remember things. But the point is, you look in Leviticus 25, for the children of Israel are servants to me. They are my servants. Well, you look at it, it says, Ki Lamed Yod, Li, Ki Li. Raises up his hand and says, Lamed Yod, which means Lamed as a prefix letter means unto or regarding or concerning, for the sake of, belonging to. The Yod suffix is me. So if Kaf means like as a prefix and Yod is my own possession, like me, belonging to me, Kili, B'nai Israel. Then it's the word Obed in the plural, Obedim. Obed is the word for worship and servant. And then it says Obedim, Obedi, servants, servant. Hey, mem is the word for them. Remember, mem suffix is plural. And if it's kaf mem, that would be you, plural, because kaf is a suffix, means you. If it's tav mem or lamed mem, in this case, hey mem, that's basically them. So they are my servant, they. And then asher, aleph shin resh, like the word Israel, asher, aleph shin resh, esher, like the artist Escher, same basic word, pronunciation-wise anyway. But that means, if you see the word Ashri, like in Psalms 1, Aleph Shin Resh Yod, it's translated happy is the man, or blessed is the man, or praiseworthy. Asher means straight, right, valid, authentic, confirmed. So asher also is used as a transition word meaning who, that, or which. With that one which is this, so W-H-I-C-H. So to look at asher and say, well, which one of those definitions does it really mean? It's all of them, in that when I look at the word asher, it's a transition word. It's talking about something, whoever is this, or that which is this. So it's in reference to something previous about something following. Whoever this is, valid, authentic, truthfully, straight, right, bringing you into the next phrase. Whenever you see asher, especially when it's hyphenated like this. So you could say they, well, that's in reference to the Obedi. There's a Beatles song where I think that goes Obedi, Obedah. But again, just a little catch in your mind, a little barb hook to remember, oh, Obedi, that's Obed, obedience, 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 obey. The children of Israel must obey. Obey what? Well, he gives requirements of instruction, stipulations of covenant. Straight, right, authentic, valid, blessed, happy, praiseworthy, who, and then it says, Hey, Vav, Zadi, Aleph, Tav, Yod. So hey prefix, it means the. Vav is a connector. It can mean and, but. So it's kind of like Kaf Yod in a lot of ways. Zadi Aleph, in this case, Zadi Aleph Tav Yod. So the Tav Yod, I will or I have. So from what I understand, what I've heard in Hebrew, there's only two tenses. There's it's presently happening or it's not. And if it's not presently happening, it could be the past or it could be the future. So why do they do that? Why don't they have past, present, and future like we do, like any sensible person would in their language, like English? I have ran, I do run, I will be running, past, present, future. But in Hebrew, it's this concept of it's either present or not present. That's why you've got different translations. Is it the past? Is this word I will or I have? Zadi Aleph is the verb. Well, you look in the dictionary under Bet Aleph, and it means import, coming in. Zodi Aleph is export, going out. So you look at Zodi, I think the word is Zodi Aleph Hey or Zodi Vav Aleph, and it's small sheep. And it's because you let the small sheep out first and they set the pace so the rest of the flock doesn't go too fast and leave them behind. If the little sheep go out first and go out slowly, then everybody else can stay as a group. That's why Zodi Aleph isn't really a sheep, but in the dictionary it says it's a sheep or a lamb, a small one. That's why, because of the verb action of Zodi Aleph. And Shin Hey is the word for lamb. And if somebody wants to say, well, what is Zodi Aleph? Is it sheep or is it not sheep? It's not the way Hebrew works. Tav Yod, is it past tense or is it future? And I make that issue because I've seen some verses where in the Stones to Knock, the Jewish book, and I say that you can only get this at the Art Scroll publication, Jewish bookstore, but it says, I will have redeemed them, or I will in the future redeem them, or I have done this. King James will say it's past tense, and Stones to Knock will say it's future. It's the same exact word. The only way to wrap your mind around what Elohim is telling us is that there's something that's true and there's something that's not true. What's that got to do with timing? Well, if in his mind he says it and then he's going to do it, that's the truth. And so it just doesn't matter. This is my reckoning with it. If he said it in the past that it's going to happen, then you got to count on it that it's as good as done. So when he tells us, say the New Testament concept, that Yeshua said, don't swear, meaning I swear by the temple that I'm going to do this or that, or I swear by the gold in the temple, I swear by the Ark of the Covenant in the temple. It's not that if you swear by something and something greater is a stronger swear. It's just like, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Quit even thinking those ways. If you say you're going to do it, then do it. Period. Why does he say that? Well, he's chastising human behavior. He's actually helping us think like Yahuwah thinks. Yeshua's guiding us to have the mind of our Father in heaven, the way he thinks. When he sets his mind on something, that's what it is. And he sets his heart on it, that's what it is. And like he told Moshe one time, turn me loose, step aside, let me go, and I'm going to kill every one of them, and I'm going to raise up a new nation out of your genetics, Moshe, instead of just Abraham's. Even though Moshe was of Abraham, it's still that, but just get rid of that whole other side of the family. And Moshe says, oh, come on, I'm not up for that. Please don't. But you see, it was in Yahweh's heart to do that, or at least it was a thought. And it's like, doesn't he know what's going to happen? Doesn't he have everything mapped out, like John Calvin said, predestined, prescribed? I know some people think that everything that happens on the face of the earth, he already knows, and it's all locked in exactly, and we're all just walking out a script. But whereas that might be true, the way I read the scriptures, he responds to things in surprise or in disgust or agitated and furious to see what people are doing. It's like, what the heck, you guys? It's like, he wrote the script. What's he getting upset for? Or is he just pretending to be upset like an actor? When David said, hey, I'm going to build a temple, and he said, it never came to my mind that you should do that. What? I believe that's why the way I recall the verse describing that occasion. And it's like, wait a minute. It never came to your mind. Don't you already know that David, you're not going to allow him to build the temple, but he's going to gather the building materials. Solomon, his son, you know about him, right? Bathsheba's son. Well, Bathsheba, just so you know, Bath is Bet, which is daughter, Bet Tav, and Sheba, that's the word seven, which is Shin Bet Ayin. So I believe I understood that there was a man with seven sons, and then he also had this daughter. So if he's there's a man with seven sons, Shiva, or the man known as seven, or the vow, the Bat Sheba is the daughter of that guy named Sheba. That's the way the words work. But the point is, why would Elohim get upset with David? Doesn't he know that Solomon is born of Bathsheba? So David had to take Bathsheba. So he had to get rid of Uriah, her husband, in order to impregnate her so that the kingdom could be handed to Solomon. And he was going to give Solomon more wisdom and wealth than any man who ever walked the face of the earth. Wasn't that all written out? Well, then how was he going to do it if David didn't take Bathsheba, saw her bathing on the roof? And how much of this stuff is Elohim's script and how much of it is just stuff that happens that he is surprised, doesn't know? I mean, he says, I know you guys, speaking of Israel, he says, I know you guys are stiff-necked, hard-hearted, rebellious. I know what you're going to do. I know you're just going to rebel. You're going to do everything wrong. You're going to go after Elohim, Achrim, and I'm going to have to kill you all in the desert. I know that. But you're still my people, and and it's like, wait a minute. Does he know it, or does he know our tendency, what we're probably going to do? But he's hoping we don't. If he invented and designed the psychology of Adam, then he had to design every single, like a software program, if this, then that, a flow chart. Incredibly complex. Every feeling, every emotion, the idea that you can have an idea. How do you design that? Incredible. But every human facial expression is tied to a thought, is tied to a feeling, just me trying to ponder. I can feel my face taking on a certain gesture that's tied directly to that. And it's like, how does he do that? There's so many muscles in the face. There's people that study the face, police work, detectives, that they can sit there and read. There was a TV show, I forget the name of it, but it was about that. Somebody who could look at every little thing and know whether the person is, not know for sure, but pretty well guess whether the person was lying or fibbing, making a story up to lead people. And it's like, how can you do that? Well, he designed that whole thing. He designed every little hope, aspiration, fear, feeling of shame or guilt or despair or longing. He's got that. He designed every bit of it. Interest, pleasure, taste. If you think about, oh, it just evolved. Well, that's pretty remarkable. But to think that he thought up every one of those little things and designed that into Adam, that's just, it astounds me. But you go back to this verse again. They are my servants, Israel. So besides being Adam, say human compared to the animals or trees or fish or birds or plants or stars, or Adam, that he equipped with this capacity to think, to feel, to have emotions, desires, interests. He equipped him with speech. I think it was Jesse Duplantis, a preacher that I heard one time on TV, TBN or something, and he wrapped up the whole thing of what is it to be human. He says, man is a speaking spirit. To think of yourself as a spirit having a temporary existence within a corporeal flesh body, okay, that's the vehicle to move around in. But the whole reason we exist is to speak, or the unique capability he imparted to Adam was to speak. Well, if that's true, that's outstanding enough, extraordinary compared to everything else. But then to zero in and say, speak what? Well, gosh, the language. To conform to the language. So when Elohim put Adam and Hua on the earth and then knew that when he kicked them out, because they had had everything provided for him, he says, now you're going to have to farm your own food. Now you're going to have to provide clothing and shelter. Now you're going to have to calculate the seasons and know that, boy, you better prepare for this one and the next one. Now you got to look at nature and interpret, what are the animals doing? What are the plants doing? I better learn how to read that so that I can prepare for what's coming. Adam had to learn that. And then if you read the book of Enoch or Jubilees, from what I understand, the fallen ones, the watchers or certain type of angel came down and said, hey, we're going to give Adam, humankind, a bunch of stuff that they were never supposed to know. And it's like, maybe, but what do you mean they're never supposed to know? If you could see animals with sharp, pokey things can impale another animal and then eat it for dinner, does Adam not have the brain power to say, hey, if I get a long pokey stick, then I can if I can shoot it or throw it? So it says that, I think in the book of Enoch, that these fallen angels gave man the idea of weaponry. It's like, whatever. Maybe that's metaphor. Maybe that's just like the Greek and Roman deities. I don't know. The point is, it's not big of a stretch of the imagination to say that it took some angel sticking thoughts in Adam's head than for Adam just to look at the obvious. So I don't know what to believe reading books like that, whether they're metaphorical, like a lot of Native American stories are metaphors. It's kind of like that story, Song of the South, where you've got Brer Rabbit and Brer Bear and Brer Fox. Brer meaning brother, brother rabbit, brother fox, brother bear. And they engage each other with their personality types suited to the animal they are. The rabbit was the trickster, you might say. In Native American Southwest, at least from what I understand, the coyote is known as the trickster, the devil, the adjutant. But those are metaphors. Does the Bible use metaphors? A lot of people think the Bible's full of metaphors. But what I'm saying is that so what any of us make of what we read, it's like, well, is he up there waiting to see what people will do? Or does he know for sure what people will do? I don't know. If we think, like John Calvin, that everything's predestined. I talked to an old man at my Presbyterian church I was going to when I was a teenager, and he said, everything's already mapped out. And I said, well, then why do we pray? And he said, because he told us to pray. It doesn't change anything. We pray because he told us to pray. We're just doing what he said. But to expect that your prayer is going to make a difference, not to the Presbyterian mind. Now, maybe if you're a Pentecostal or a Baptist, maybe you believe that the prayers matter. So when you see that there was some advertisement or some, propaganda that says prayer changes things, not necessarily. That's a doctrine. It's not necessarily truth. Asher, that word Aleph Shin Resh, is not the word truth. but it's more like the word truly, verily, authentically. You should count on this, especially if he raises his hand and says, Ka'amer, so says, or Kiani Yahweh, because I am Yahuwah. So when we read these words and we're realizing he's trying to get us to think a certain way. Why? If he's just going to do what he's going to do, then what does he care whether we think a certain way or not? If we think a certain way, and then the quantum effect, quantum transference, quantum entanglement, the cymatic. The cymatic is the resonance that's invisible, hits the surface of the water, let's say water or sand, and then it telegraphs or it causes the manifest on the surface of the water a geometric pattern because of the, you might say, the interference or the way that these resonant sound waves affect the water to bounce around. The ripples that it forms are just like not normal ripples. They're like a static position, not a ripple moving, another ripple, another ripple. That's the whole cymatic thing. But if that's to say, if Adam is a speaking spirit, it's not necessarily just that he can speak. That's astounding enough, but it's that when he speaks, something happens based on what he's saying. But then with this whole quantum thing, and I mentioned that lady Veda Austin and Dr. Emoto, the Japanese researcher, and the Len Horowitz, Joseph Puleo with the solfeggio tones. And there seems to be, because some people will deny it, but there seems to be a proof, an asher, a connection of, look, this is doing that it's not just our thoughts, but it's not just our words, but our thoughts actually have a projected effect. Like the cymatics. We talked about this thing, I believe we talked about it on the talk here, of the 100th monkey. And they found this to be an experiment, in an experiment that it's true, at least so I understand it, that if you have an island and there's a bunch of monkeys, and then on the mainland a bunch of monkeys, and one monkey on the island starts doing something different, like he picks up a rock and cracks open a coconut and then eats it. Say no monkey has ever done that before. Well, then another monkey on the island sees him doing it, so he picks up a rock and he cracks open the coconut and he does that. It's like, okay, well, now two monkeys are doing something that no monkey has ever done. Once you get to the 100th monkey on the island that are doing that behavior, suddenly the monkeys on the mainland start doing it also. Though no monkey sees the guys on the island doing it, it's just like something transfers across space that they start sharing the consciousness. How is that possible? Well, it can only be possible because that's the way this place is built. So this idea of how many of who has to do what, when, for how long, with what heart, before there's that effect, that's an expression of the 100th monkey. They're suggesting 100 people. The concept of a minyan is 10 people. I've heard that the Jews, if they call for a prayer meeting, and if there's not 10 men, they won't even have the prayer meeting, or they won't have the Bible study. There's got to be a minyan of 10 men, not women, not children, men. Abraham, when he was saying, if there's how many, would you kill the righteous with the wicked when it comes to crashing down Sodom and Gomorrah? He stopped at 10 because that was the legal minimum, that he had that thought. Minion. Memnoon is men, minion, memnoon yod noon. Memnoon means to count. Shin memnoon means to count. Just so you know, that count to 10. Yod is the 10th letter. Mini, tiklu farsi, and the handwriting on the wall. Well, that's translated weighed and measured or counted. You've been assessed for value and found lacking. That's what Daniel told the king of Babylon. Now your days are up. The count of your days are over. Even tonight, you're going to lose your kingdom. Medes and the Persians had stopped up the river that was flowing under the city wall, came in under the city wall through the river channel and overthrew the capital, Babylon. That was the Medes and the Persians that invaded. I tell those little bit of a story because I know some people who have never read the Old Testament. They're Christian believers of the New Testament, but have never looked at the Old Testament. There's no reason to in their doctrinal position. They've been told there's no reason to read it. Well, he says, going back here to Leviticus 25:55, you are my servants whom I have Zadi Aleph. Aleph Vav Tav Mem is simply translated them. Hey Vav Zadi Aleph Tav Yod, I have exported Aleph Vav Tav Mem, them. Well, see, at least in my understanding, if he would have put Tav Mem or Hey Mem, or even Kaf Mem, meaning you, after the Tav Aleph, or after the Zadi Aleph Tav, what if he said Mem? I have exported them, I have exported you. But then he writes in this word Aleph Vav Tav Mem. Well, Tav Mem, that would be the suffix meaning them. But Aleph Tav Hey is the word you, Y-O-U. Aleph Tav Yod is the word me or my. Aleph Vav Tav Yod is also me or my. Aleph Vav Tav Mem, them. Sometimes just the Vav suffix is them. I've also seen the Vav suffix meaning or translated as you. It's also here, it. So if you see the Vav suffix, is it he, it, theirs, them, or you, yours? It's used for all of that. How are you supposed to know how to translate it? Step back and just try to get a feel of what he's saying. If Tav Mem is the plural, them or theirs, Aleph Vav Tav is a sign, a symbol, an insignia, like a flag, like a logo. It's a stipulation, like a debar, of an agreement, like a term written on a contract. It's a point of a contract. It's a fact of a consideration. But being a sign and a symbol, then in the dictionary, it also says it's a letter of the alphabet, one of these letters, Aleph Vav Tav. So this mem plural of Aleph Vav Tav, well, if you've ever heard the word otiot, Aleph Vav Tav Yod, my Aleph Vav Tav, and then the Vav Tav is the feminine suffix. Yod Mem is the masculine suffix. So if this said otim, that would mean plural of the insignias, logos, symbols, but it's never used as otim. I've seen it otiot. That means the letters or the symbols. But if you say, well, like Shem is name, Shemayim That should be names. But Shemot, that's otherwise known as the book of Numbers, is names. Shemot. Shin Mem Vav Tav. Shin Mem Yod Mem is the word for heavens. Well, that's because the word Shem is not just name, it's also place. So you can say, well, why are the heavens called the heavens? When you look at the sky, what do you think of? Well, you think of the objects in the sky, or I might think of, well, most notably, if it's daytime, they got the sun. If it's nighttime, there's the moon, the stars. What are the stars? Well, they're places with names. They're Shem with Shem. Shem is name, Shem is place. So the heaven has the sun. Well, that's in the sky, it's a Shem with a Shem. Moon, I'm just saying that's what the word Shem is about. So if you say the oat have names and places and stipulations, he then goes on to say Ma'aretz Mitzrayim. Well, from the land. Mem is from. It's also the place of. Eretz would be land, but Resh Zadi, rats, like the word rats, are ATS. What do rats do? Well, they run. They're fast runners, little tiny legs. But man, those guys can move. The runner the sprinter on a track and field athletes, be rats, runners. But it also, because you volitionally run with enthusiasm, I want to do this, it has to do then also with the desire, with pleasure, running volitionally. If you look at Resh Zadi or Resh Vav Zadi, Resh Zadi Hey, again, the benefit of the dictionary, it's easy, especially Klein's dictionary. And I keep saying that, and you might say pushing Klein's, but if you look at other dictionaries, they don't work the same way. They're not laid out. Something's different. Klein's etymological dictionary is just exceptional. And you'll realize that when you look at all the other ones. It's kind of like, who is Yahuwah? Well, he's that God of the Old Testament, bunch of laws, kind of a monster guy. He's got a really bad attitude, flips out every once in a while. You can patronize him, burning up a few of your pet animals, but it seems to be the only thing that'll kind of tone down his temper if you light some of your animals on fire. Strange God. But what? Who's Yahweh? There's a verse, I forget where it is, but he said, the entire world's mine. Now, the Lebanon, we think of that as that place up in just north of Israel, the country off the western, well, it's the western part of the continent, the eastern shore of the Mediterranean Sea. But it used to be a thick, heavy forest, cedar trees especially, but just heavy forest, huge area. And Yahweh says, do you think if you lit the entire Lebanon up, that's a suitable burnt offering, but killing all the animals that live in the forest? You think that's going to do anything? That's not what I want. It's not about burning up your animals. Why, Israel, do you even think that that's who I am? Because I said you could offer a sacrifice to atone for your ignorant, unintentional sins. Because I said that, you now spin that into my character, thinking that I want you to inflame your animals and that will appease me. I mean, that's enough to get him more ticked off about us thinking that's who he is than what he was originally mad at, which was our behavior contrary to him. I mean, what a stupid, ridiculous doctrine to hold, but yet how many people still hold that doctrine? I know people that have that doctrine. The doctrine of who he is and how do you appease him. It says here, translation, I have taken you out of the land of Egypt, but the idea of mem being out of, but it also means the place of. Mem as a prefix means the place or the tool, or the one who is about that business. Mem noon means to count, like I said, mene, but mem noon, if you look at the dictionary, as a word, it means out of, away from, and beyond. It's like there's this, and then way past that, like taking a situation of identifying him and then going way overboard or extrapolating from there, or the doctrine's expanded from that premise beyond reason, beyond whatever could be determined. When you get this playing with those ideas, like Disney's or Pixar's, it was Toy Story, the Buzz Lightyear character said, to infinity and beyond. It's like forever and ever. It's like, if you've already got forever, how can you have more? If you've already got infinity, how can you have more than infinity? It short circuits logic. It goes, well, that's what Leolam Va'ed, forever and ever. Va'ed, see, Ayin Dalet Ed is a witness. So it's like the word Leolam is forever and ever is the witness. It's like somebody saying, you betcha, and how? You betcha, and how? That's an English idiom. That's kind of like and ever. Just so you know how Hebrew works. Leolam va'ed. Va'ed is like the witness, the testimony, like memnun, beyond even what you think you understand. So then you say from the land of Mitzrayim, from the land. But if ma'aretz, aleph means I will, resh zadi means run, like a track and field event, like jumping hurdles. So you could say, this is the place, or this is the track that I'm going to run. I'm a 100-yard dash sprinter, or I'm a marathon runner, or I'm a long jump leaper. The thing which I'm going to run on purpose, because I want to, because that's my specialty, is the resh zadi. And the fact that I'm going to do it is the aleph resh zadi. Well, that's the word translated earth or land. Well, he's the guy that named this place Earth. In the beginning, Genesis 1:1, Bereshit, bara Elohim, Aleph Tav, Hashemayim, Ve, Aleph Tav, Ha, Aretz. Last word, seventh word in the first sentence, he named this place Earth, or Aretz. I'm going to run what? The gauntlet, the course. What course? I see these 22 letters. You might call them 22 hurdles. You might call them 22 stepping stones along a certain path. 22 obstacles in an obstacle course. I'm going to run that. It's like, what? Is that the meaning of the word earth? That's the way I see it. Why would he do that? You're going to try to figure out why would he do anything? You don't know who he is or what he's about. If the Elohim of creation, the guy that made this place, whoever, whatever, whenever that was, 15 billion years ago or jillion, quadrillion, zillion years ago, it doesn't matter. What did he do before he built the earth? Was there a different universe with different types of complexities and different sorts of situations? Creatures that didn't have a mind like Adam, or even like a Tyrannosaurus Rex, or like a butterfly, but other creatures we have no idea. What did he do for eternity before he made this universe and this earth and this Adamness that we are? We have no idea. All I can say is, based on the spelling of words, This place that's called, I'm going to run this 22-letter sequence as if they were symbols, Aleph, Vav, Tav, of an oath. Each one of the letters is a symbol of a stipulation, of a requirement, of a thing. They're not just hurdles, they're particular concepts. Each letter is the symbol of a concept. That's what Aleph, Vav, Tav, Mem means. Ma'aretz, according to the track that I'm going to run, Mitzrayim, well, we know that means the land of Egypt, or Mitzrayim. Well, Zadi Resh is the word for rock, or obstruction, affliction, oppression. So Mitzrayim is literally, Yod Mem suffix, is the place of hardships, the land of oppressions, persecutions. Well, they were slaves. They weren't slaves the whole time. When Joseph moved in, yeah, he was sold as a slave and he worked at Potiphar's place and he was thrown into the dungeon. He became vizier, which is like prime minister of Egypt, second only to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh just kind of kicked back and let Joseph run the whole thing because he saw how blessed Joseph was and that everything he put his hand to was a success. So the Pharaoh just said, hey, I'm gonna hitch my wagon to this ox and let this ox just pull, or this engine, like a speedboat. Joseph's the speedboat, and I'm just going to ski behind him. I'll let him run the country, and I'm just going to woohoo. That's essentially what Pharaoh was doing. He says, I'm still a Pharaoh, but you can wear my ring. I'm still sitting on the throne, but you go run the show. And he was just taking it all in. Pretty smart Pharaoh. Once, as the story goes, Israel forgot Yahuwah and became Egyptianized, took on the Egyptian culture, took on the Egyptian gods, took on the mindset of the Egyptians, in which case they removed themselves from Yahuwah, he removed themselves from them. And then, whether he put a bug in the ear of some Egyptian or it just happened, one day, one of the Egyptians said, wait a minute, what's going on here? Why are these foreigners ruling over us? Why are all the native-born Egyptians just sitting here serving this other people? Something's wrong with this story. So there was a revolt, and it actually overthrew Joseph and his lineage, the Hebrew family, ruling Egypt. And the Egyptians took over and turned all the Hebrew guys into slaves. And then they cried out to Yahweh. They remembered him, cried out. Moshe was born, and it wasn't until Moshe was 80 years old that he came back and the Exodus happened. They were released from their slavery. So the question is, how many years were the Hebrews actually slaves in Egypt? At least the 80 years, and probably a few years before that. If we guessed maybe 20 years before they cried out and said, help! Maybe they were only slaves in Egypt for 100 years. Nobody knows. But I could at least, if I was going to speed it up and say what would be the shortest amount of time possible, how many years of oppression being a slave would it take before somebody said, hey, we can't get out of this on our own, and this is very unsatisfactory, uncomfortable, and this is just wrong. How do we deal with this? I mean, maybe 20 years, maybe longer, but the point is, the Hebrews were not slaves to Egypt for the 400 years they were. Some people think they were there. Abraham was told by Elohim somewhere around Genesis 15 that Yahweh was going to make Abraham a great nation. He had no children at the time. And that 400 years, they were going to be in a land not theirs. He said, when the Israelites come back, they weren't called Israelites at the time, they would just be the offspring of Abraham. When they would come back and then take over the land of Canaan, he said, because the iniquity of the Amorites, the cup of their iniquity is not yet full. So Elohim knew it was going to take up to 400 years from the day he was talking to Abraham before the cup of iniquity was full. Was that because it was prescribed, pre-written? He just knows? That's what was planned? That was timed in the stars? That was 5 minutes. When you read something like that, it's like, what? How's he running this place? What's going on? It's still a bit of a mystery. Anyway, when he says, I have exported you from the land of Egypt, as I said, you could read this as releasing or exporting or going out, like publishing something from the land, can be read as according to the course, the track event course, running with intentional pleasure. Mitzrayim, oppressions, the place of oppression, but it could be a hurdle is an oppression. The long jump, you got to jump 20 something feet. That's the challenge. It's a place of challenging disturbances. And then he goes on to say, Ani Yahweh Elohekam. I am Yahweh, your. See, the kaf mem suffix there is your, and the word is spelled Aleph Lamed Hey Yod, El He. So to say Yahuwah Elohi, Yahweh is my Elohi, or I can say Elohim with the mem suffix because he calls himself Elohim, could go either way. So when he says, I am Yahweh, your Elohim, what does that mean? But see, if I read this, that he just said, according to the obstacles I'm going to run, and you're my people, you're my Obed, you're my worshipful servant. At the end of, or the beginning of, Leviticus 19, the first word of Leviticus 1:1, Vayikra, means, and he called out, he summoned, but it also means learn how to read, Kuf Resh Aleph. So does that mean he's calling his people to learn how to read? That's what we're talking about here, is looking at each one of these letters. But then, I think it's Leviticus 19:2, I think is what it is. He says, I am Kadosh, Israel, therefore you are to be Kadosh. Let me look that up here just before we end this first session. It says Leviticus 19. Yahweh spoke to Moshe saying, that's verse 1. Verse 2, speak to the entire assembly of this children of Israel, say to them, you shall be Kadosh, for Kadosh I am, Yahweh your Elohim. You will be Kadosh because I'm Kadosh. And this other verse, for the children of Israel are Obedi, my servants, my worshipers. The point is, to be Israel is not just any other nation on the face of the earth. It's a specific calling, a specific role where we're thinking like him, talking like him, walking like him, keeping the Moedim, which are his Moedim. Thus, to learn this language or to think of this as 22 obstacles of a course that he says, I'm going to run this. How's he going to run this? To think of Elohim as a spirit, an ethereal consciousness with no physical body. Well, if these are 22 obstacles on the face of the earth, how's he going to do that? There's a verse that says, heaven is my throne, earth is my footstool. You look up that word for footstool, and it means the place you put your feet. That's a footstool, otherwise known as an ottoman. You know, here's your comfortable chair, and you bring a stool and you sit back and you put your feet up on the stool. That's the place you put your feet. That ottoman, well, you could sit on it if you wanted, but it's designed as the place to put your feet. Well, if he's going to run, he's got to invent or give himself a foot. Well, he gave Adam feet to run, to walk. So if he made the earth as a place to put his foot, but he doesn't have a foot because he's ethereal, non-corporeal, not stuck in a body, then is Yahusha being born as Adam, as a man, as the last Adam, is that him giving himself a foot so that he could come down to the earth and Aleph the Resh Zadi? I will, by my own desire, run this course. And I know there's people who say, he would never do that. He couldn't, he wouldn't, he didn't. What do you mean he couldn't, wouldn't, and didn't? How do we know who he is? If he says, Ani Yahweh El Hekam, I am Yahweh, your Elohim, and I want you to be just like me, and I'm going to Eretz Mitzrayim, I'm going to volitionally, with enthusiasm, run this obstacle course of oppressions, of hurdles, just for the fun of it. Well, part of the hurdles are the mental trauma, the physical pain, the angst, the death, the frustration, the fear, the not knowing. Are those the letters? Are those the obstacles? They're not necessarily just climb a ladder, jump over a pond, whatever might be in a human obstacle course. But are they the things that Adam goes through mentally as he goes through this life? Where's Elohim when you need him? Yeah, like Psalm 70, which we're going to look at in a few minutes here. We'll take a break right now, and then we'll come back and look at Psalm 70 as an expression of this obstacle course.